Hello, everyone, and welcome to Rewind number 31, WWE Great American Bash 2007. Cameron here for what should make for another fun show today. Before we get into the show, I'd like to take the time and run off some reminders. First being that if you haven't heard our last week's show, Rewind number 30, WWE Night of Champions 2008, be sure to check that out. It's not too late. Our Rewind shows in particular are never too late to listen to. I get that once, the follow-up episode to like Raw, SmackDown, Dynamite, whatever comes on, sometimes people may not find the need to listen to the pay-per-view recaps, which, of course, I'm not saying not to do. Please listen to all of our shows after the fact. Check out all of our shows and listen to them at any time. But the point I'm trying to get at is no matter what, our Rewind shows are timeless. When we do the Rewinds, we're going back to wrestling events of the past and revisiting them. Simple as that. So if you haven't, once again, give Rewind number 30 a play. Coming up next week on the program, we have Rewind number 32, TNA Slammiversary 2010. That show features Jay Lethal versus AJ Styles, a tag team match between Beer Money, James Storm, and Robert Roode versus Jeff Hardy and Mr. Anderson. And in the main event, we have Rob Van Dam versus Sting for the TNA World Championship. Should make for an interesting one. I myself always enjoy when we do the old TNA pay-per-views of the past. And I guess our audience does as well. Like, we had done the Forgotten Monday Night War show back in January. We did our Hard to Kill review and recap. Both of those shows did pretty decent, all things considered. So I was like when we do. And also, not to mention, before I forget, the TNA Lockdown 2009 show we did pretty good overall. So, yeah, I always like doing the TNA shows. I can't speak for everyone else, but I mean, I'm pretty sure they do as well. But I especially enjoy doing the TNA shows as well. Nonetheless, that will be coming your way Sunday, July 12th. Then the following week, we'll be back with 3 different shows. Starting on Sunday, July 19th, we'll have our Impact Wrestling Slammiversary 18 or 2020, whichever you want to call it, review and recap. For that show, we'll have Jordan Grace versus Deonna Purrazzo for the Knockouts Championship. Willie Mack versus Chris Bay for the X Division Championship, a Knockouts Gauntlet match to determine the number one contender for the Knockouts title, and we also have a 4-way match. It's being announced now. It'll be Eddie Edwards, Trey Miguel, Ace Austin, and a mystery opponent for the Impact World Championship. We do not know who that is, obviously, yet. They're going to wait till the pay-per-view. Many people are speculating who that may be. I mean, I kind of get the impression that whoever that's going to be is probably going to wind up winning the title because they're building up Ace Austin right now. They're building up Trey. I mean, these were 2 guys like a year ago who weren't even on the Slammiversary card, so they're building them up, so I can't see that. Eddie Edwards, I guess if they would have made like a 3-way, then obviously I could totally see him just making him the world champion and running with it, because, I mean, he is by far, I'd say at this point, I think he's the top worker in that company, and I also think that he's like, I don't know, he's just like the top performer in that company. Like, he never has bad matches, and I wouldn't mind obviously if he was world champion again, but I'm thinking it's going to be whoever that mystery opponent is. That's just going to be the world champion when Slammiversary is over. And also, another thing to look forward to is just they've been teasing the arrival of certain stars over the past month or so, people who have been there in the past, people who may be going there for the first time. So I'm looking forward to seeing who's going to be coming to Impact Wrestling. Because, I mean, obviously they're not going to get every single person they've shown in these video clips or whatever, these teasers or whatever. They're not going to get everyone, but they're definitely going to get some of them. And there's been plenty of guys who've been, they were released from the WWE back in April who have been teasing appearing at Slammiversary. So I'm very interested to see how that turns out. And I'm also just looking forward to it just because Impact will be back on pay-per-view for the first time in 6 months. Originally, of course, Rebellion was supposed to be held back in April, but due to the COVID-19 pandemic, that event had to be altered, and I think that's basically a good way of putting it because, I mean, it did happen. It just became like a 2-week special on Impact as opposed to like airing it in traditional pay-per-view format, but once again, they didn't have all the guys there with them, so they probably figured that the best way of doing it would be to turn it into a 2-night special, which I think it was. And I enjoyed those 2 episodes of Impact those couple weeks. So they did good with that, but I'm glad to see them back in a traditional pay-per-view format and being able to deliver the way they usually do. So looking forward to Slammiversary. That show will be held on a Saturday night this year. So the following day, 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, that'll be the usual time for our Rewind shows. Instead, you're going to be getting the Slammiversary review and recap. Then on Monday, July 20th, we'll be giving you our WWE Extreme Rules of the Horror Story review and recap. For that show, so far we have Drew McIntyre versus Dolph Ziggler for the WWE Championship, Bayley versus Nikki Cross for the SmackDown Women's Championship, Asuka versus Sasha Banks for the Raw Women's title, and then we have Bray Wyatt versus Braun Strowman in a Wyatt Swamp fight where the Universal title will not be on the line. That pay-per-view will be coming your way Sunday, July 19th, so we'll have our official review and recap of that coming up your way Monday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. So we'll have a whole weekend of pro wrestling pay-per-views. That's something to always look forward to, especially now during these difficult and uncertain times. But then coming up on Tuesday, July 21st, we're not done yet. We'll have a special bonus edition of Rewind. For that one, we'll be continuing our string of 2008 WWE pay-per-views with the Great American Bash. That show features CM Punk versus Batista for the World Heavyweight Championship, Shawn Michaels versus Chris Jericho, JBL versus John Cena in the Parking Lot Brawl, and then Triple H versus Edge for the WWE Championship in the main event. A show that originally wasn't scheduled to be a part of our summer lineup for the month of July, but was added in as a late addition for you guys because we figured it's like we're doing all these 2008 pay-per-views as it is also, so it's like we might as well just continue that going. The only one I don't think we're going to, well, obviously, I guess unless it was just like Brian and I doing this one, where maybe we could get like his perspective this time around. Outside of that, like we have like, we'll probably be doing like, I think now, like the remainder of the 2008 pay-per-views, like throughout the rest of the year for us in the show, except Armageddon 2008, we did that already, because in the beginning with the rewinds, we were just kind of like, feeling things out, just taking turns. Just we had like a list of shows written down, and we'd just pick them off and just go with whatever one we felt like doing at the time, or like shows that we were interested in, like just rewatching. So that's simply how we did it before. So that show is out there, so of course go ahead and listen to it if you haven't yet already. But I guess what I'm trying to say with that is like that's the only one probably that like we won't end the year off of, like when we just go through the rest of the 2008 reviews. I'm thinking, like, there'll just be shows that we just cover just to cover down the road as well. But I'm thinking, like, I think, like, the year, like, themes and stuff like that are good for the show. Or, like, maybe we could pick a few different years we just go down the list of pay-per-views on. So I think that'd be cool to do. And I think that'd be a good way of doing it. So we'll have that bonus rewind for you Tuesday, July 21st. Then on Wednesday, July 22nd, sorry, it's not another show this time, but it is something in relation to the program, and that's the announcement for Part 3 of our summer lineup for the month of August, the final part to our summer lineup. Whereas of right now, working on putting that all together, so we don't have anything confirmed yet. Like, obviously, July 22nd, that's when we're going to announce it anyway, so like, there's no point in like announcing it now, but the point is July 22nd, that's the date. That's when you guys will find out what's coming up for the month of August. So, as always, I think it's going to be like a pretty good month. This month, I think will be a really good month. But I think August has the potential of being even better. Of course, when we do announce those lineups and everything, things are like, it's like subject to be changed. So we can always wind up choosing to do something that we may end up like switching it like beforehand and whatnot, or we may even add something to it. But I just have to throw that out there because I do feel bad, because originally this rewind, for example, was not the originally scheduled program that we were looking to do, but we ended up switching it a midpoint during the week just because we just felt that like this would be a better show, I guess, to discuss in terms of like, we've already done like a collection of 2007 pay-per-views. I haven't done them all, but we've done like a fair amount of them, so I think this would be like a good one to cover as well, especially with it being July and everything Great American Bash. And then finally, to close out the month of July, coming up on Sunday, July 26th, we'll have the final rewind of the month, rewind number 24, ECW Heatwave 1998. Considered by many to be the greatest ECW pay-per-view of all time. That card features Taz versus Bam Bam Bigelow for the FTW Championship in a Falls Count Anywhere match. a six-man tag team match between Spike Dudley, Tommy Dreamer, and the Sandman versus the Dudleys, Masato Tanaka versus Mike Awesome, and plenty more. Once again, Sunday, July 26th will be Rewind number 34. And one more thing, just in case you're a new listener of the program, let's take the time and tell all of you the great ways you can listen to the show. JNC Radio is available on all top podcasting platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, CastBox, Podchaser, Google Podcast, Deezer, and Podcast Addict. Wherever you get your podcast from, we should be on there. If not, let us know, and we'll do our best to try and fix that. And if you happen to listen to the show on either Spotify or Apple Podcasts, be sure to follow our pages on both platforms. If you're a Spotify user, follow JNC Radio on there. And if you're an Apple user, subscribe to us on there as well, that being Apple Podcasts. With all that out of the way, let's take the time to do something that we do on every Rewind, and that's to give some backstory as to how this event shaped up heading in. This will be the 9th pay-per-view so far in 2007, which is absolutely crazy to think about. I just think about how they had too many pay-per-views back then. Like, even today, I still feel like they have too many. But in 2007, it was far worse. So far in this year, they had New Year's Revolution, my favorite, the Raw Rumble, No Way Out, WrestleMania 23, Backlash, Judgment Day, One Night Stand, and Vengeance, making this the 9th so far. And with us previously covering the 2007 Royal Rumble, No Way Out, WrestleMania 23, and Judgment Day, if you haven't heard any of those shows, be sure to check them all out. As noted earlier, I think it only makes sense for us to continue along with doing another 2007 pay-per-view here, especially with the month being, the Great American Bash and everything. I just feel like this would be a good fit. The main program at this time over on the SmackDown brand was between the World Heavyweight Champion Edge and Kane, following Edge's victory over Batista by countout at the Vengeance Night of Champions pay-per-view in the Last Chance match, where this would be Batista's final opportunity to challenge Edge for the world title during this reign and the last chance to win the title from him. It was time for Edge to have a new challenger. On the July 6th edition of Friday Night SmackDown, SmackDown General Manager Theodore Long would announce that the new challenger to face Edge for the World Heavyweight Championship at the Great American Bash would be none other than Kane, who I must say is an odd choice in terms of everything, at the time at least. Although Edge and Kane would have some history in the past, more so back a couple years ago, in kayfabe when Edge had stolen his wife and everything. That's all I'm going to say about that for now. But then the next week on SmackDown, the July 13th edition, the Great Khali would issue an open challenge to face anyone at the Great American Bash. That challenge would be accepted by Batista. So at this stage, we'd have the Great Khali versus Batista and Kane versus Edge for the World Heavyweight title at the pay-per-view thus far heading in. However, also on the July 13th edition of Friday Night SmackDown, Edge, with the episode emanating from New Orleans, would throw a Mardi Gras celebration where it would be interrupted by Kane, who would then attack Edge. During the segment, Edge would suffer a torn left pectoral muscle, forcing him the following week on the go-home show before the pay-per-view to vacate the World Heavyweight Championship. With the title now vacant, Teddy Long would announce a 20-man over-the-top rope battle royal with the winner becoming the new World Heavyweight Champion. Kind of a similar deal as to when Batista had to vacate the world title due to injury, and there was a battle royal put in place to crown a new champ. The final three left in the battle royal were Kane, Batista, and the Great Khali, where we would see Khali eliminate both Kane and Batista and become the new World Heavyweight Champion. Later in that night, both Kane and Batista would face each other one-on-one to determine who would go to the Great American Bash that Sunday to challenge Batista for the gold. That match between the two would result in a no contest following interference from the Great Khali. But due to the interference, that World Heavyweight title match at the pay-per-view would now become a triple threat match between Khali, Kane, and Batista. As originally it was just going to be a one-on-one deal, but since Khali interfered, it got turned into a triple threat match instead. For Monday Night Raw, the main program was between the WWE Champion at the time, John Cena, and Bobby Lashley. Man, it seems like when we do a lot of these rewinds, John Cena a lot of the time is the WWE Champion. Just saying, like, not complaining or anything, but it's like, it seems like it's either that or he's always in the WWE title match. It's just something. It's just something I just picked up on. But yes, John Cena and Bobby Lashley, these two had actually worked with one another back in 2007. A match I feel like many has forgotten even took place. This was also still soon after Bobby Lashley was drafted over to Raw from the ECW brand. He had been drafted to the show as ECW World Champion, but he was immediately stripped of the title as apparently that was against the rules. This all This whole match between Cena and Lashley got set up through the results of a Beat the Clock challenge that had taken place on the July 2nd edition of Raw.